Hey, what's up, guys, gals, everything in between and out of the spectrum? My name is Joe Dirt, and welcome back to the channel. Today, wait, hold on 1 second. Ooh, okay, yeah, all right, that's better. Let's get into it. What's up, guys? Today we are going to be looking at character sheets in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I wanted to do this in a I wanted to do this in a paper fashion. However, it was a little too complicated with lighting and trying to get the right focus on the paper. However, I'm going to drop in the link below a fillable PDF copy of the D&D 5th edition character sheet, which you can print off. I don't know how long this video is going to take, so let's get into it. I want to keep this short, concise, if we can. We're going to try to get at least explaining what everything is first, and then we'll go in through to the next video with trying to get everything filled in for the character sheet that itself. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, so we are here, and we're gonna go through the explaining what each of these is, just in case if you do not know what these are. So this we're gonna go from top to bottom in this case, so that way we can be sure we go through and figure out what is what and which you're going to need to figure out, and then for backstory purposes, and then also explaining what each of these random circles is, because they can be intimidating when you're first looking at them. So at the top here, underneath the Dungeons and Dragons, your character name is your character name, where my mouse is currently. So this character name is whatever you're going to name your D&D character, and that is completely up to you. So it's first, last name, or just a first name, maybe just last name. Who knows? That is up to you and your backstory. Now, over here in the box next to the name, it's your class and level. So your class is essentially what you're going to be picking. We will cover that in the next video. So you can choose from anywhere from wizard to barbarian. That will be what where you're going to put this on the physical character sheet. Now, the level is what level are you starting at? So this is usually what you're going to discuss with your dungeon master, or your DM, or your game master, or your storyteller, whichever they prefer to be addressed as. So that's where those two are going to be. And then next to it is your background. Now, backgrounds is not backstory. Backgrounds are effectively different additives and stories to give you more abilities such as arcana, survival, depending on what you're choosing and really what you're picking. That's where you would put it. Oftentimes you'll see hermit, sage, pirate, maybe even cultist, depending on what you want your character's background to be. Can very well affect your backstory. But if you look in the player's handbook for classes, which we'll go into in the next one, you'll be able to see that as well. And then the player name, that is your name. It's just so that way if you are playing at a physical table, so if you print this out, which after you fill it out, I would recommend doing, that's just to list it as yours so it doesn't get confusing, especially if you have a fancy name or something like that and your name is similar to someone else's. They don't get confused. Now, your race is exactly that, your race. So if you wanted to do half orc, elf, half elf, genasi, air genasi, earth, wind, fire, or if you were looking to do Asimar, tiefling, that's where you would put it. And then if you're choosing a very specific variant of that, like one of my favorites is Protector SMR, that's where you would put it. And then your alignment is essentially from lawful good to lawful evil. So what those alignments mean, a lot of DMs don't specifically, like me included, as a dungeon master. Nobody really leans into alignment. It's more of a guideline. So if you're a lawful good character and you're going around, murking a whole entire village, you're not really being lawful good. Now it depends also on what type of paladin you're, going for. So if you're doing an Oathbreaker paladin or a or or just a really not so great paladin, you could be lawful evil. Then I mean it would make sense. But if you're playing the Oath of the Ancients and you're playing a good paladin, not that Oath of the Ancients specifically is good, but typically they are. Now, depending on the character, this is where you would decide it when you're writing your backstory. Like, how good do you want your character to be? Do you want to be them lawful good, chaotic good, neutral good, and neutral evil, chaotic evil, and so on and so forth? That would be where you would want to put that. Now, experience points, it depends on if your DM is having you do milestones or experience. If it is an XP based system, a lot of adventure leagues do XP systems. You would put your XP there and then you would just add it up and tally it up. In the player's handbook, there is a good way to do that. Now, coming down here, inspiration. Inspiration is given out by the dungeon master. The dungeon master will say, "Oh, that roleplay was really good, David." I'm just gonna use the random name. They would give you inspiration, and that's where you would mark it here, just with an X, and just say, "Okay, I have inspiration." You would mark it on the character sheet itself when you're creating it like this. So you would leave this blank until that moment when they give it to you, and that way you can erase it. Now we're gonna go over to proficiency bonus down here, right under inspiration. Proficiency bonus is essentially uh, judged by every few levels. So if you're starting out at level 1, it's +2. We'll go over that more when we go into actually building a character, which will be next episode. This is just to where you will be able to have proficiency in the specific class or tools or abilities that you choose. Now, when we build a character, I will go more in depth into it. I just want to explain what they are. Now, armor class is essentially your 2-hit bonus. So armor obviously means your defense. So if you're not wearing any armor, your armor class is usually typically a 12 to a 14. This takes into account your dexterity plus your armor, or unless you are a barbarian or a monk, in which case you have unarmored defense. That would take into your proficiency bonus as well. Now your initiative is a dexterity based score. So whatever your dexterity is, which we'll get into here in a minute, that would essentially affect how good your initiative is. So it'd be dexterity plus proficiency in some cases. So definitely keep an eye on that, and we will when we build our character, we'll go through and do that as well. Your speed is essentially your race's walking speed. Unless you're a monk, your speed really typically doesn't change, or a barbarian for unarmored movement, then that would change. Now, your hit point maximum is your HP. So whatever your max HP is, so if it's 152, it wouldn't be that way. Or like say it's 15 at level 1, you would put that up there in the top there. And then your current hit points, you're gonna leave blank. So if you're bringing this as a paper character sheet, you don't want to put anything in there so you can erase it later. Same with temporary hit points. Those temporary hit points are usually given out on spells like Hero's Feast, or some cleric spells give you temp HP. Depending on what the case is, or if the DM grants you temporary hit points, or if you have like Armor of Agathis, if you're a warlock, that will give you temporary HP, and that's where you will put it, and then you can erase it, and it just covers your maximum HP. And then over here is personality traits are all backstory related, along with ideals, bonuses, and flaws. So depending on this is all backstory things, and this is where you're going to always have something to remember, like how would my character react. Like my character's flaw is take Ragnar for instance. If you're on the channel and you're watching the uh, Twitch videos, which I recommend if you haven't followed me on Twitch, my link will be in the description below, and also I'll be linking the playlist up there somewhere in the top corner. Go check out my D&D playthrough as well. Ragnar is very arrogant, he's vain, and those are his flaws. He has a gigantic ego, and those are his flaws, and thinks he can never be defeated. So it's important to give a character flaws, but that's all we'll go into when we actually build a character. And then like the bonuses are for like bonuses to different like your tool bonuses, or any bonuses that don't fit over here, which we'll get to in a minute. And then the ideals and personality traits, that is all different things that you will look into, and we will go through once we start filling out the character sheet. And now here is the hit dice, is where you're going to be rolling. So this is where you'll mark every level. So you get, say, a wizard is, this is going to be the easiest, is a wizard has hit dice is 1d6. So you would put in 1d6, and that's your hit dice, that's your HP dice. And then the total you have, say it's a level 10, it's 10d6. So every time you'd level, you would add, 1d6. Or if you're multi-classing from, say, wizard to warriors, because you're a buff wizard or a dexterous wizard, that's where you would put it, and then you would add the 1d10 for the hit dice in there. So we will get rid of that. And then so the death saves. Now what happens when your character gets hit down past 0 hit points? You don't just straight die unless they hit your maximum HP. So if you say you had 15 HP and the creature or the adversary hits you for 30 hit points, you are just straight dead. So it has to meet your HP and then double. So 15 times 2 is 30. So that would be very unlikely to happen, but could happen. A lot of death happens between level 1 through 5. Once you get to the higher levels, it becomes harder to insta-kill people unless it's a spell like that is meant to kill you. But typically you won't run into that issue. Now, in order to roll a death saving throws, you have to roll a 10 or a higher to succeed, and you need to succeed 3 times. A 10 or lower, you fail. Now, you're probably wondering what happens if I roll a natural 1. Then that means you get 2 failures. And then vice versa. If you roll a natural 20, you get 2 successes. But in some cases, and again, you'd have to discuss this with your dungeon master, you sometimes, if you roll a natural 20, because it's like less than a 5% chance of happening, they'll just bring you back up to stabilization, or they may even be nicer and bring you back up to 1 HP. But you have to discuss that with your dungeon master. Depends on their rule of cool. Now, we're going to get into this part. Now, these are your attacks and your spell casting. So if you are a melee player, This is where all your melee weapons would go, and to your hit to hit bonus, and a description of, like, you know, the damage and stuff. So what dice it is, so you don't have to pull up like your book and say, okay, a great axe is what is it 2d6. Oh, no, it's 1d12. You'd put it all there, and then this, and what damage, how much damage it does. So like, say it's a 1d12 plus 6, that's what you would put here. And then the to hit bonus. So if you're a strength based character like Ragnar, his would be a +7 to hit with a great axe. And then these are your that you would list if you have 2 attacks, 1 attack, and just your different types of attack and spell casting. And these are also where you would put some of your spells. So I would recommend putting your main form of your quick spells right in here, so that way you have them in front of your face. Or put your weapons here, and then some of your spell information here. And then to here, this is your equipment. So this is where you would put all the equipment that you have. This is where you would put your gold and your money on the side here, where my mouse is, and I'm clicking around, so you can keep track of your money and stuff. Over here is your features and traits. I know I'm avoiding this up here because this is going to be a bit to go through. So features and traits. So these are your character specific and your class specific traits. So depending on if you became a different class and say a barbarian, this is where you would put all your barbarian, like your unarmored defense, unarmored movement, rage, and all that right over here, just so that way your racial bonuses and stuff like that, so you can keep track of everything you have to your ability. And then over here is other proficiencies. This is for like languages, tools, and stuff like that. As well as if you have night vision, I would put that in there. Those are just your extra little tidbits for your backstory. Well, your backstory and racial features and just tools and stuff, and your background and things like that. Whatever that gives you. Now to the most prevalent portion is the strength modifiers: strength, dex, con, int, wisdom, and charisma. Now strength is obviously how strong you are. That is the most imperative thing. So if you have a plus, let's say you have a plus 12 strength in this bottom circle here, that would be a +1. Now with strength 10 is the median. The 10 is the median that you would roll for base of stats. Now, in order to figure out what those are, we'll go in depth, but it's commonly known. And if you go to a local LGS, it is 46. You take out the lowest number. We will roll those stats together, and then I will show you how it's done physically in the next video. But this is just an explanatory video. But I wanted to show you where you're putting them. So this would also go into your proficiency bonus. So if you're level 1 with a +1 strength and a +2 proficiency, you would have +3. So that would go into all these over here, which I will get to later. Dexterity is what you would expect. How dexterous are you? If you are a rogue or a monk, they typically to be more agile. And that's what you're looking for. And like I said before, that affects your initiative bonus. So how fast are you moving in combat? How fast are you to react? How fast are you able to jump the gun, essentially? Constitution is how hardy are you? How this goes and affects your HP. So your hit dice over here, I said it was a 1d6. So for a wizard, but I didn't add yet. What is your plus to con? So say if you have a +12 to con, it'd be 1d6 plus 1. So that's what you would add to your constitution bonus to make sure you have more HP. So every time you roll, you would roll a 1d6. If you're a wizard, 1d6 plus 1 for your HP to add that up. And your intelligence is how smart are you? This is book smarts. So for wizard, intelligence is key. If you haven't figured it out, we're going to be building a wizard, guys, because it is probably the hardest class to start out with if this is your first time. And I want to give you the hardest example so that when you look at the later the features of other classes, you'll have the highest expectation of hard level, or maybe if you're interested in a wizard, this will help you. So intelligence is how book smart you are. Wisdom, how wise are you? This is I view as street smarts. How savvy are you? And this affects your perception, which is down here. We'll get to that in a minute. And it has a few effects over here as well that we'll get into in a minute. And then your charisma, obviously, if you've ever met a charismatic person, it's the same. It's the same thing. How charismatic are you? How much of a people talker are you? That is what this is over here. Now, what we're going to do here is we are actually going to zoom in a little bit because I want to get into here to get to the smaller letters as well. So, strength, these are your saving throws. Now, the saving throws, strength, saving throw, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, these are all here. Now, depending on your class, you will hit the pip right here to show that you are proficient or not in it. So, for barbarians, for example, it's strength and click, strength and constitution that they're both proficient in. Which it's not letting me click that. Oh well. But yeah, if they ask for if your dungeon master asks for a saving throw, say a rock is tumbling down, and you're just like, I need you all to dodge out of the way. I need you to make me a dexterity saving throw. So it'd be your dexterity right here, plus your proficiency if you are proficient in it, which is why you mark the pip to signify that you are proficient in it or you're not. And then those are just saving throws. So those are reactive. So if you are reactive and say a trap is there, or if you need to make a wisdom saving throw, this is where all the numbers would calculate in for that. So depending on if you are proficient or not, you will add, say your strength is +1, +2, you have a +3 there, but say your dex is 10, you just have a 0 in there. Or maybe if it's 6, you'd have a negative in there for dexterity. So you would you do a 1d20 minus whatever it is. So that is where that would take place. Now, these are your skills. Now, when you are building out your character, skills are very important to think about. Now, some of them are racial, depending on what you are going to pick as a race and a class and a background. So, for instance, depending on how you want to build your character and what you want to build it as, that's where we're gonna really dive into that. But if you look over here on the right, it says Dex, Wisdom, Int, Strength, Charisma. Now, bear in mind, you don't have to. For Ragnar, for instance, he has acrobatics and athletics because he's very strong and he's very agile. So depending on how you're going to build the character is depending on whether you want proficiencies in it or not. Now, if you are a rogue and monk, you get expertise as well in some abilities as well. Same with bard. So those kind of things will change and you'll have an added bonus to it as well. So depending on the class you want to pick and depending on the character you're building, it will vastly change. But it's the same as saving throws. So say for acrobatics, you have a +1 and then you have and that's it. But you're proficient in it, you would add your +2 for your proficiency bonus up here. And as you level, it'll go much higher as it happens. So depending on what you're doing, say if you have an 18, which would be a +4, +2, that's a +6 Arcana if you're highly intelligent. And then you would also mark the pip here if you wanted to show that you're proficient, which if you are, I would recommend because then you would understand which is which. uh, that I would recommend 100%. So if you're not proficient in it, you would say take your dexterity. If your dexterity is 0, your acrobatics would just be 0. If it's +1, that's why that little number in the bottom is important, because that'll signify what your normal active use of these are. So if you have a +1, 2, 4, 8, or 6, or whatever your dex or con wisdom is, list them all here, and then add your proficiency to the ones you're proficient in for your skills. And now your passive perception. Your passive perception at the base level. So if you have a 10 wisdom, you would have an 11 passive perception. Now, depending on how high your wisdom is, or if you take feats to increase your passive perception, then that will change. So depending on how that is affected will very well deem what your passive perception is. Now, what is passive perception? Well, it's how well do you notice just the world around you just walking normally. So you not paying attention. So think of it as walking down the street, and you're just, looking at your cell phone, and then all of a sudden you move to the side, and then a bike speeds by you. That's your normal passive perception saying, oh yeah, there's something coming. And then you scuttle to the side a little bit and then keep going. But if you have a low passive perception, you get hit by the bike because you didn't see it. And you weren't actively paying attention. So if you're not actively looking, your DM often will have your character sheet and just look, okay, your passive perception, take my ridiculous bard, for instance. He was pretty charismatic, but he was more wise than anything. He had a 28 passive perception, which is ungodly high, because he paid attention to everything. He could see everything at level 10. It was gross and disgusting. There are ways to boost it, because 30 is typically the highest. At that point, you can see everything at all times unless you're asleep or unconscious. That is very well possible to do, but for a level 1 character, typically you'll have anywhere from an 11 to a 14 passive perception, roughly, or lower, depending on how you roll. But we will be rolling stats together in the next video. Now, if we scroll down here, this is just your character name again, just so, because these are two separate sheets, so that way there are 3 sheets in total, unless you do front and back, and for these. And then this one is your character's age. This is all backstory stuff. So character age: how old do you want them to be? How tall? How much do you want them to weigh? What hair color are they? And hair length. Skin color: do you want them to be a brown, a white, a green, a blue, a purple, furry? It doesn't really matter. This is made up. So have fun with it. And it also goes to race, depending on if you want to be a tabaxi, a leonin, and things of that nature. And then eyes: do they have different colored eyes? What color are their eyes? And things of that nature. And then this over here is your character's appearance. This is where you will, let me zoom out here real quick. All right. No, that didn't help. All right, we'll just come back in. So if you, depending on, how you want your character to look, as well as, what do you want their overall appearance to be? What do you want them to look and feel like? Yeah, we're gonna do this little live edit right here. There we go. Here, this is all descriptive. This is all for you and for the DM to look at and know and visualize in your head what you want them to be. Now, over here is allies and organizations. Now, if you're part of a guild, you would put the guild name here, and then you would type what is the guild about? Is it a thieves guild? Is it, a bakery guild, a fishing guild, or maybe it's just a couple friends. Maybe you got some buddies back home. Who knows? You would put all that information in this box here. So you would put everything your character would have done prior. So if they have no allies and they're a lone wolf kind of guy, you could leave that empty, but that makes it really no fun to have characters from your past come back and help you, or maybe give you a quest hook for your backstory. So bear that in mind when creating a character. What kind of allies and what kind of organizations would you want them to be a part of? Do you want them to be a part of like a football club, or maybe a rugby club? Maybe that's what they were doing. Who knows? Or if they're a mage, maybe a mage school. Who knows? The possibilities are endless because it's your imagination. Now, additional features and traits are different things that you can pick up for feats and traits. So if you want to put all the extra stuff down here, maybe you want to have like your maybe you want to have your features and traits up here be exclusive ones that you need ready for combat in an instant. For a better glance, you can do that, and then put all the extra ones maybe for that you don't think you're going to use too much, but maybe they're your background features for the background that you chose when you were creating the character. You can definitely do that. I would definitely recommend that one to put those down here. Now, the character's backstory over here, I wouldn't honestly recommend putting the character's backstory here, because this box should not fit your whole character's backstory. I'm going to tell you that right now. Depending on how your DM runs it, if you're just going into a Adventures League style game, yeah, sure, just do a quick paragraph. Or if your DM's just write me a paragraph and then that's it. But if you're building a massive world with your friends, I would recommend just writing that on a different piece of paper, and that'll go straight there. But this one is great for quick cliff notes for you. Say if I have a sister and I'm missing my sister, I lost her 3 years ago, and blah 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 blah. Put that all there. And then over here is treasure. So if you have an heirloom, maybe, or say you went into a dragon horde, I would leave this blank. Don't type anything here at all currently. Leave that blank, so if you end up going to a horde, you can put all the treasure that you can allocate right into there. So that's where all the treasure and things of that nature would go here. Or if you have you're doing a quick, maybe you're the group's finance person, then you handle dispersing all the gold. You can use this to just quickly list like 5 long swords, 3 crossbows, 560 bolts. You got 45,362 platinum, 862 gold, 52 copper, and 10 electrum. Nobody uses electrum. But you can put all of those there, and I would recommend leaving that blank for the time being. Now, here is where it gets complicated. You guys are probably looking at this and going, what the heck, Joe? This is why we're building a spellcaster. This is specifically the reason. This is your spellcasting. Now, if you're a spellcasting class, you'd put Bard, Cleric, Paladin, Warlock, or Wizard, or Sorcerer right up into this area, or Ranger. They do have spells. Just so that way you know. And then your spellcasting ability. Now, your spellcasting ability is your main casting stat plus your proficiency. So if you are a wizard, it's intelligence plus proficiency. And then your spell saving DC would be the same as well. It would be your casting ability plus 8, and then a couple other things. We'll go into that. I don't want to dive into it too much this video. And then spell attack bonus is proficiency plus your 2 hit, which would be in case of wizard is intelligence. Now cantrips are your always on skills. Now for cantrips, I always recommend having different kind of like maybe a 2 hit ability. Now bear in mind, cantrips don't do a lot of damage. You can just repeat them over and over and over again. Cantrips for spellcasters are something that are the very first thing you learn as a spellcaster. So like Mage Hand, Message, and Dancing Lights, and things of that nature are things that you learn, are the first thing you learn. They're very, 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 very basic magic. I would always recommend to have some utility as well as at least some damage, just so that way if you run out of spell slots, you can still have a little bit of utility and you don't feel completely hopeless as a caster. We'll go into that once we get there. And then you, depending on your class, you would put all the cantrips that are available to you, and then as you go, you get more. Those are called level 0 spells, hence why there's a 0 right there. Now, 1, your spell level 1 are your first level spells. Now, the spell slots total is where you would put it. When you first start, you have 2 spell slots, and then slots expended, leave that blank. So if you're printing this out, but if you're using the PDF that I'll have linked below, which is this one, just put a 0 for the time being because you haven't expended it, and when you use it, put a 1. Now, where the spell name is, you have these prepared spells. Now, this is where you would prepare them, and then I would pip, and or just have them there, and this is where you would write the name of the spell. Now, depending on the first level spell, so if you have Healing Word, or if you have Thunder Step, or Misty Step, or something like that. Misty Step's a level 2 spell. But this is where you would put all of them, and this is level 2 spells, and then you have 3, 4, 5, and then all the way up to 9. These are all different spells that you're going to get. Now, bear in mind, if you're a half caster or a quarter caster, you may not see 9th level, but the persistence is the same. The only thing that changes is if you're playing a warlock, you always cast your spells at max level. So if you are, say, a level 9 warlock, you'd cast all your spells at like 4th or 5th level all the time. So, and you only have 2 spell slots, so it would always be 2. And until you hit later levels, once you get 3 and 4 spell slots, and then if you multi-class, it's the same thing. It gets real weird. But this is where you would put them all. And then for if you are printing these out, don't activate the pips, but it's, if you wanted to fill them in, you could, just so that way you could say, okay, I used this spell, because eventually, if you're playing a wizard, each of these slots totally available, are completely different. So eventually you're going to get 5 here, you're going to have 2 level 3 spell slots. That's so that way you have different ways to mark them. But if you want to, say you have 2 here, and then you want to with a pencil mark in the slots, like I used a fireball, level 3 fireball, okay, cool, level 3 fireball. But bear in mind, other spells can be upcasted, so if you have 1 level 4 slot, that's why the spells expended is huge, because you would write down, you have you've used your 1 of 1's 4th level spot. So depending on what you're doing, the spells can be upcasted, which we'll get into in the next video. But guys, gals, everything in between it and out of the spectrum, my name is Joe Dirt, and this has just been your quick overview into the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons 5e character sheet. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below. If this video helped you at all, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and I'm going to be putting out more how to help videos. So please give us a subscribe, and I'll see you all later. If you guys have any other questions, please be sure to hit up the Twitch in the description below. So until next time, friends. Bye-bye.